What is up, guys? So I've got a particularly interesting deck for you today. Look, I'm so happy about this. So we found out that Odd Eyes Revolution Dragon is going to be one of the OCG imports for Rise of the Duelist. And so, I mean, that card on its own is already awesome. It's such a good card for Odd Eyes. It's such a good card for, to be honest, any deck that uses sort of Dragon Pendulums. It's great because it can search any. I will read its effects in a second. But one deck in particular that does really well with this card and some others is Amorphages, as they are all dragons. This is pretty much the only proper Dragon Pendulum deck. I know you've got like the Draco and Overlords and stuff, but they don't really count. But yeah, this is the only real Dragon Pendulum deck. And obviously, Odd Eyes Revolution Dragon being a once per turn, not soft, not hard once per turn, just once per turn searcher for the entire archetype, and the 12 scale is insane. So guys, I'm going to quickly go into this, and guys, make sure to stay tuned until the end. I'm going to have some gameplay of me wrecking people with this deck, but let me quickly read the Odd Eyes Revolution Dragon effect. So you cannot pendulum summon monsters except dragon monsters. This effect can't be negated. You can target one dragon, fusion, synchro, or XYZ monster in your graveyard, destroy this card and special summon that monster. So to start off with, that effect is actually amazing, to be honest, to be able to just summon any dragon monster in the graveyard pretty much. Now, this isn't going to come into effect with your Amorphages. Obviously, Amorphages deny the extra deck, but if you are playing sort of an Odd Eyes deck or something like that, that is a great effect to bring back your Vortex or whatever that's ended up in the grave. Now, on top of that, it has a really good monster effect as well. It's quite hard to activate, but you activate it is amazing. So, must be either Pendulum Summon from the hand or Special Summon by attributing 3 dragon monsters. That's not the one I'm talking about. I'm talking about this. You can discard this card and pay 500 LP, add one level 8 or lower Dragon Pendulum monster from your deck to your hand. Guys, that effect is nuts. Now it also has another kind of, it gains attack and defense equal to your opponent's LP. You can pay half your LP to shuffle your opponent's cards. That's amazing, but to be honest, it's really just that search effect. Look, after that search effect, there's no clause saying once per turn or anything like that. You can just use that effect as many times as you want. You draw 2 of these, that's 2 of any dragon pendulum monster. This card is amazing. There's definitely you're gonna be seeing this in a few decks. I mean, if we still had Electromite and we still had Magician Pendulums, we probably would see Revolution Dragon at 3 in that deck just to search Dark Worm really easily. Though I know Dark Worm was nicer in the graveyard, but still, you'd probably still see Odd Eye Revolution Dragon in that. I mean, it's just an amazing card, to be honest. It just does so much. Now let's move on to the Amorphages. So the Amorphages are very unique archetype. They're basically a bunch of floodgates. They're a bunch of pendulum monsters that are partially floodgates and partially monsters. So each one has a floodgate effect in the pendulum scale while you control an Amorphage monster, and then they have a monster effect that basically says, all of them have the exact same monster effect essentially, that says neither player can special summon monsters from the extra deck except Amorphage monsters. Now there are actually no Amorphage extra deck monsters, so I don't actually know why. Maybe I don't know if they're planning to release one. I'm pretty sure there aren't any. The only thing they have that's not a pendulum monster is a more Factor Pain, which is a ritual monster. But yeah, they don't have any extra deck monsters, but basically, yeah, it denies both opponents special summon from the extra deck. So we start off with Goliath, 2750 attack, no defense. All the Amorphage monsters as well have either 0 attack or defense. But yeah, it has the effect while in scale of Macrocosmos essentially. So any card sent to the graveyard is banished instead, except Amorphage cards. Also, once per turn during your standby phase, this is another clause that all the Amorphage cards have. You tribute one monster or destroy this card. Moving on, we have Sloth. This is basically the card effect of Mistake, so it stops players adding cards from the deck to the hand apart from drawing them. So essentially your opponent can't search cards. Pride prevents either player from taking effect damage. Now what you have to be careful is this is effect damage. So cards like Solemn Judgment and Solemn Strike, where you're paying life points as cost, do not apply in this situation. This is effect damage that it denies. However, it's still a nice effect. Move on to Wrath. Wrath stops either player from tributing monsters apart from Amorphage monsters. Envy stops players activating cards or effects as chain link 2 or higher. This is a very unique effect because it basically means your opponents can't Ash Blossom an effect that you have, for example, or they can't chain a Nibiru to an effect. They could chain Nibiru to an end of a phase, but they couldn't chain Nibiru to an effect that you're activating or something like that, for example. So this is actually a really unique and quite a good effect in some situations. Amorphage Greed. This denies players from activating trap cards or their effects apart from Amorphage cards. Lechery stops spell cards. Gluttony stops monsters, and again, this is just effects. It doesn't matter where their monster is, it just stops their effects. So as we can see, there are a suite of insane floodgate effects in the Amorphage monster lineup. So we're going to be playing at these ratios. Now, the Amorphage monster ratios really depend on what you're trying to achieve. For this format, in my opinion, Greed is very good, obviously, because we have decks like Eldritch and Altergeist that are quite strong at the moment. Then we have Lechery, which is always going to be strong because it denies spells, and Gluttony, which is always going to be strong because it denies monsters. Now, the reason why I play Pride at 3, Pride isn't a particularly good monster in terms of its effect, but it is a good normal summon. It is the strongest Amorphage that you can normal summon without attribute, so that's why we play him at 3. I would probably play Wrath at 3 as well. Like you could get away with playing Wrath at 3, maybe cut out the MV completely if you wanted to, but I just like having that versatility of having at least one of each of them. But yeah, generally what you want to do is scale Lechery and Gluttony, and you want to have something else on the field. Now we'll move on to the rest of the deck. So we obviously going to play 3 Extravagant Terraform, just the kind of generic draw utility spells. Then we're going to be playing 3 Amorphage Infection. This is quite a good card. Now, one of the big weaknesses I would say of Amorphages is just the lack of searchability, and that's why Revolution Track is so good in the deck. They can't search any of their spells or traps at all. However, their spells and traps are still really good, which is why we're going to play them free. So Infection says all Amorphage monsters on the field gain 100 in attack and defense for each Amorphage card on the field. If a monster in your hand or you control is tributed or destroyed by battle card effects, you can add an Amorphage card from your deck to your hand. So this is the only way you can search. So in actuality, this is not a strong search spell, but because it's pretty much the only way to search an archetype, it becomes a really, really good and crucial search spell for the deck. So you're definitely going to be running this at 3. You need to see it as soon as possible. If you don't see this or your field spell, it's just too hard to maintain advantage, because what will happen is that your Morphages in the scales and stuff will just start blowing themselves up and you can't do anything about it. Amorphous Persona, their field spell. Again, this field spell is not amazing, but because of Amorphages, we just need to play it. So Amorphous Persona, all Amorphages gain 300 attack and defense up to twice per turn. If an Amorphage monster you control is tributed, draw 1 card, and then it acts as a ritual spell, but we don't play Amorphactor Pain in this variant. You can actually play him, he's not too hard to bring out, but you don't really need him. I would say that I might do a build with him and a couple more kind of a more richly focused build, maybe with the Drytrons or something, but I'll let you guys know how that goes. But anyway, yeah, so then we have Sky Iris. So we play 3 Sky Iris simply because it searches Revolution Dragon, which searches everything. So Sky Iris's objective is just to get to that Revolution Dragon, and that essentially denies your opponent from targeting Magicians, Performer Powers, or Odd Eyes cards in your Pendulum Zones with card effects, and you can destroy a face-up card you control to add an Odd Eyes card from your deck to your hand. So yeah, that's why we play Sky Iris. Now, we also have the last Amorphage trap, which is Amorphage Lysis. All monsters on the field except Amorphages lose 100 attack and defense for each Amorphage card on the field. If a card in your Pendulum Zone is destroyed, you can place 1 Amorphage monster from your deck into your Pendulum Zone. So again, this is our other kind of way of searching. As you can see, they do rely a lot on kind of your opponent blowing up your cards and stuff. I mean, you can technically blow up your cards because if you have this in Sky Iris, it will search as well. But in general, it's going to be relying on your opponents to destroy your stuff to get the searches. But that doesn't stop the deck from being manageable. I mean, it definitely did do well. It was actually doing quite well on the OCG before, but obviously we didn't have half the cards. They also have Phantasm Dragon, which is a 0 scale, which obviously is perfect to have a 0 and a 12 scale on a Dragon archetype, but we don't have that. But anyway, moving on from that. So I play 3 Judgment, 1 Strike. To be honest, you don't really need to worry about most things. Most of your floodgates are covered by your monsters essentially, so I don't need to play use of floodgates like Macro, Cosmos and Skill Drain because I've got those in my main deck. So most of my cards can be just focused around denying my opponent from stopping me doing things. So if I play Judgment, for example, I don't have to worry about my opponent evenly matching me or suddenly activating a strike on me or something like that. None of that I really have to care about. That's why I do play the 3 Judgment. And the 1 Strike, this could be a warning, to be honest. This could also be a Witch's Strike. I mean, there's a lot of different cards you could play instead of the Solemn Strike. You don't really need it. It's rare that I even have to activate that, so I might look for a variant for that. But then the only other kind of spice in deck is the 3 Crackdown. So Crackdown is great because, as you can see, the Amorphages need to tribute a monster to maintain the zone. That's how Konami have balanced them. So Crackdown allows us to steal our opponent's monsters, and then we can tribute them off our effects to allow our Amorphages to stay in the Pendulum Zones, which is amazing. Now, moving on from that, the extra deck really does not matter. You can't go into extra deck. 9 times out of 10, it will be impossible to go into extra deck. So I've just filled it with super poly targets and random link monsters that you could put in. It really, really does not matter what's in your extra deck. simply because 9 times out of 10 you can't go into it in the first place. But yeah, these are some cards you can put in your extra deck just as kind of generic targets for whatever's in the meta. Moving on to the extra deck, to the side deck, sorry. Now, obviously, game 1, you have all the floodgates in your main, so you're covered against most matchups if you play well. However, games 2 and 3, that's when you can start siding in more specific things. So, for example, have lightning storms, which would be a very, very good addition to kind of break through a board and do stuff. Then you're going to have your evening matches and your impermanences and stuff. Super Poly is a really good card in this deck. One of the reasons why is because your opponent is often going to be left on their initial starters and extenders. So having something like Super Poly, if you don't manage to get before you establish your board, means you can really slow down your opponent and screw them over. They go into Hulk of Fabrics or something, or they go into a generic Cyberburst monster when they're trying to link up, and then suddenly you can pull out your Earth Golem, for example. Super Poly is a nice card, especially if your opponent can't respond to it as well. Then we also have Gozer Match and Rivalry. These are the only kind of floodgates that you can't replicate. These are the kind of floodgates. These and There Can Be Only One are the only ones you can't really replicate, and obviously you don't care about either of those floodgates, so they are nice to play in this deck against your opponent. So guys, that is the deck profile. I'm gonna have some gameplay. I think I'll just do one replay just to show you exactly how strong this deck is. So I'll talk to you soon. What's up, guys? So I'm going to show you a couple replays of the Amorphage deck. Every game is going to go quite similar, to be honest with them. There isn't too much kind of extra that happens with them. They're very straightforward deck, and so I'm not too bothered that I mean, the deck I was playing against here was a very kind of non-meta deck. I'm not sure what he's doing, but to be honest, it wouldn't have really mattered what he was playing. My gameplay line would have been exactly the same. So as you can see here, put the Goliath on the scale, put the Wrath on the scale. He can't tribute. He has Macrocosmos on the as effect, and he can't summon from the extra deck. So as you can see, I mean, there's nothing he can do. With a hand like that, there's nothing he can do. And that's really all it comes down to with Amorphages. There's really not a lot I can say, but it is a really, really potent deck. Just the ability to kind of choose any sort of floodgate and put it on the field for your opponent to deny them, and then just kind of play that regular beatdown game, it's amazing. And a lot of decks just can't deal with it. So if you go first, you have a pretty good chance of winning almost in every matchup. Because even if you come up against a back row deck like Guys, you have a floodgate, that you have a Royal Decree in your deck. You can negate spells, you can negate traps, it doesn't really matter. So here we have an Orcus deck, and again, it's a similar thing. Another strength of rogue decks like this as well is people tend to not know what the cards do, and they don't respect them enough. So you're going to see here, he's going to make a big error, because at one point he could have, well, I haven't said that, I don't know what his extra deck is, but he could have used his Masquerena to bounce one of my skills or to destroy one of my skills, and that probably would have been a really good decision. But he didn't, unfortunately, and it's going to essentially deny him from even having a chance to play the game. So I'm going to go into that Extravagance. Really good card for Amorphages, obviously, because we don't care about extra deck. And I already have really good floodgates without having to search, but I'm going to put a better one in my hand anyway. So now he can't use monster effects, he can't add cards from deck to hand. So I mean, this is going to really slow down his lines of play. So I'm going to beat over his Masquerena that he's no longer going to be able to use. He can't summon from the extra deck, and he's just going to scoop there, because as you can see from his hand, there's really nothing else he can do. So guys, that is the Amorphage deck. Those are some replays, just so you guys know the kind of things you need to be doing. Make sure you give this video a like if you've enjoyed it. Leave a comment if you've got any videos or any sort of deck profiles you want me to be doing. Let me know, and be sure to get those out for you. And subscribe to my channel. I've got plenty more great content coming for you soon. I'll talk to you all soon. Peace.